I'd like you to take us through some steps about your objections. You know, this counterpoint that I'd like, you know, I want you to do to what Mr. Annis had suggested, and the suggestion was, as I have said, was to end the perpetual millage.
Right.
And to go under Act 196. Can you tell us some of your reasons, your objections to this potential change?
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
Well, no.
Okay.
I think
All right.
Yes.
There is no difference between an Act 55 and an Act 196 for what we want to do. If we're going to go with light rail or trains, yes, then we need to talk about a 196, but AATA can still work around that as an Act 55. So AATA can stay as an Act 55. The perpetual millage, AATA brought in a transit attorney who worked on the Kalamazoo, the Grand Rapids, and the Lansing transit millage. They have to have a millage every 3 to 5 years. When he came in and he looked at our perpetual millage, and they were talking about which way they should reorganize, he said, keep the millage. That we're very lucky to have this, definitely keep the millage. When you get into what Ted was talking about, like the punchki, you know, that type of thing, that is how AATA would reorganize either under a 196 or an Act 55. And it doesn't make any difference which one you reorganize under to do those 3 types. Now,
to do the 3 types.
The 3 types. The first one is what AATA is doing right now, and that's the contract method.
Right. Purchase of service agreements.
Right, purchase of service agreements. So Superior Township, Ypsi Township, the city of Ypsilanti, Pittsfield have contracts with AATA to provide services. A few years ago, Ypsi tried to float a millage, a transportation millage, to pay for that contract, and it never went through. So that's one way.
So one of the reasons, if I may interrupt for a second, for putting forth a millage is that now Ypsilanti is paying out of their general fund.
No, AA's...
for the purchase of service agreement, is my understanding.
That's getting paid through the stimulus.
Oh, now they have well, there's some money coming from the stimulus fund, but prior to that, it was really out of their general fund.
And they can't afford it.
And they cannot afford it.
And that's the same thing with Superior and Pittsfield. Now they can do what Ann Arbor has done and pass a transit millage and become part of AATA, and then they would work out representation on the board. You know, they can do that right now.
Right.
Now the second one is the layered cake. They refer to as a layer cake.
Yes.
Ann Arbor receives a very high level of a very high level bus system. You have pretty much a bus within 3/4 of a mile of every home in Ann Arbor. Since we have over 6 million people, or 6 million boardings right now, a lot of the buses are sent off to park and ride lots or into Ypsi to bring people in. So it's not quite. We don't have as good a system within the city. It's still really good, but if we do the layered cake, Ann Arbor would have a very high level of service. So we could be paying this 2.054 mils we're now paying.
Plus, a layer cake means we pay both.
Right. And then the people in the county would have a lower level of service, a much lower level service, and they were talking about doing a half mil countywide. So the city would be paying about 2.554 mils, where the county would be paying a half a mil.
Right.
That is your layered cake.
Right.
And there are transit authorities, there are counties that do that, because you have a much higher level of service within the city than you have out county.
Right.
The last one is called the donut hole.
Right.
And that means AATA, or our city millage, would stay the same, but the county would do a transit tax of maybe a 0.5 or 1, because they're scattered and their services wouldn't be, again, as high as ours. But they would have their own millage, Ann Arbor would have their millage, and you would have transportation all over the county.
Right. So, so those are the 3 options, and as it stands now, though, my understanding is that the AATA services 2/3 of the county.
Yeah.
So there's not much left really to connect with, and we do connect with other areas that the bus service does come in and we do connect. Isn't that correct?
Well, and this is one of my concerns. Ann Arbor's millage is for use within the city limits.
Yes.
And if somebody, as you say, contract for service outside, that's one thing. However, when they begin to talk about a countywide service, that's entirely desirable. The purpose of having a transit system is to go as many places as possible, give service to a variety of places. I, for one, would benefit if the bus would go to many other places outside the city. However, I don't think it's entirely practical to have the city's millage involved in paying for that.
Right.
Every locality really has to pay for their own.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, I don't think we have enough millage now, apparently, because we're not giving as much service as we should. There are places in town where you walk a great many blocks to get a bus, then you get to the other end where you're going and you walk a great many blocks there too. And that's not the world's best sort of system.
Right.
I really think that we could be, and it's so infrequent. You know, you shouldn't have to have a schedule. If you take the State Street bus, you just go to State Street and wait. And a few minutes there'll be a bus. As it is, you have to know the schedule. The buses are so infrequent, and you don't dare miss your bus.
Right. So tell us what you're concerned, if you can just point it out so people know, if it's presented to the voter, to change this millage. Just can you tick off some of the reasons why you think that people should not vote, even though what Mr. Annis had suggested would be we would be paying half as much, because we would go from a little over 2 mills to 1 is what he is suggesting. And so to clearly state, to make your case to the voter why it's against their best interest to vote for something like that.
Well, first of all, those were Ted's assumptions.
Yes.
There is another paper out there that refutes his assumptions.
Yes.
In my talking to people, if we dropped Ann Arbor's millage with the AATA brings in the equivalent of a small town every day. 22,000 riders on average come into Ann Arbor every day. If we're struggling on a 2.054 to handle that and buy the buses and pay everything we've got to pay plus the fuel costs, and we go to a model, an out-county model, where let's say Milan is only paying a half mil, and all we're doing is running express buses out to Milan and connecting to, say, Milan with an express bus to Chelsea, that is going to create problems. We will then be pulling money from out-county and these municipalities are struggling to help fund our system. So if you look at how other transit authorities do it, when you have a big city, they usually have a higher millage than the out-county because they have a higher level of service.